Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the 27th of November, 2023 Board of Education regular board meeting. I want to start us off in a good way by recognizing and acknowledging both the Esquimalt and the Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. I want to welcome everybody. Before I move approval of the agenda, I just want to acknowledge with gratitude that we have a couple of student reps with us this evening. Hamza and I think we have Althea. Did I pronounce your name properly? If not, feel free to correct me, but welcome. Nice to see you both. Okay, so trustees, may I have a mover to approve our agenda? Thank you, Trustee David, seconded by Trustee Mabobi. Do we have any changes or amendments? I think there's one at least I know of. I wonder if we could look to add, we received a letter from Friends of Boker Creek, a society dated the 23rd of November. I wonder if we can add that under B2 correspondence. Would someone like to move an amendment to add that? Thank you, Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee McNally. Any discussion about the amendment to the agenda? And again, it's just adding that letter under B2 correspondence. All right, hearing no discussion, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, so we have an agenda as amended. Any other additions or changes? All right, all those in favor of the amended agenda with a show of hands. And again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, folks. Okay, so I'm going to pass things on. We're now at A3. So this evening we have our trustee elections. I'm going to pass things over to our Secretary Treasurer, who is going to guide us through this portion of our agenda. Secretary Treasurer, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we're now on agenda item A3, which is trustee elections. The first one is the election of chair. So the position of chair of the Board of Education will be elected for the term of 1 year, ending in November 2024. The election process will be completed by text message sent from trustees to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. Trustees should have received an email with their cell phone numbers in it. Can you let me know if you did not receive that email or if you need those phone numbers? Okay, that's good. All right, so I will now call for nominations for the position of chair of the Board of Education. Please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of chair of the Board of Education to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. Thank you for your patience. The following trustees have been nominated for the position of Chair of the Board of Education. Trustee Nicole Duncan and Trustee Derek Gagnon. I will now ask each of the nominated trustees if they are willing to accept the nomination. Trustee Duncan, do you accept the nomination for the position of Chair of the Board of Education?
I do, with thanks to my nominator.
Trustee Gagnon, do you accept the nomination for the position of Chair of the Board of Education?
With thanks to my nominator, I politely decline.
As we have only one trustee who has accepted nomination, Trustee Duncan is declared Chair of the Board of Education by acclamation. Congratulations, Chair Duncan. I will now pass the gavel to you to preside over the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer, and thank you, colleagues. It's a pleasure to serve you as chair, and I look forward to another year. Okay, so we do have some other elections to attend to this evening, so let's get underway. So I'm going to now call for nominations for vice chair. Vice chair will be elected for a term of 1 year, ending in November 2024. I will now call for nominations for the position of vice chair. Please text your nomination to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. Please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of vice chair of the Board of Education to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. All right, so we've heard back from our scrutineers, Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. We have one trustee who was nominated for the role of vice chair. I will now ask that nominated trustee if they are willing to accept the nomination. Trustee Kwan, are you willing to accept the nomination of vice chair?
Thank you to my colleagues, I accept.
All right, so in that case, the vice chair is elected through acclamation. Congratulations, Vice Chair Kwan. Okay, so we have a couple of other positions this evening, so I'm just going to get us there. Okay. So I'll now call, so at A3C, this is the position of the British Columbia Public School Employers Association representative, otherwise known as BCPC, will be elected for a term of 1 year ending in November 2024. I will now call for nominations for the position of BCPC representative. Please text your nomination to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. Please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of BCPC representative of the Board of Education, again to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. Okay, folks. So I will now, so the following trustees have been nominated for the position of BCPC representative. Trustee Bayot, Trustee Gagnon, Trustee Kwan, and Trustee Mabobi. I will now ask each nominated trustee if they are willing to accept the nomination. Trustee Bayot, are you willing to accept the nomination?
Thank you to my nominator, but I'm going to decline. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Bayot. Trustee Gagnon, are you willing to accept the nomination?
With thanks to my nominator, I will also be declining.
Thank you, Trustee Gagnon. Trustee Kwan, would you accept the nomination?
Thank you to my nominator. I will accept.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Trustee Mabobi, do you accept the nomination?
With thanks, I decline.
Thank you, Trustee Mabobi. All right, so as we have one trustee who has accepted the nomination, Trustee Kwan is elected through acclamation. So Trustee Kwan, congratulations. All right, folks, so we have one more position that we will vote on this evening. And that is the position under A3D, British Columbia School Trustees Association, BCSTA Provincial Councillor will be elected again for a term of 1 year ending in November 2024. I will now call for nominations for the position of BC STA Provincial Councillor. Please text your nominations to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. Again, please text the name of the trustee you would like to nominate for the position of BC STA Provincial Councillor of the Board of Education to Deputy Superintendent Caldwell and Associate Superintendent Arts. Okay, the following trustees have been nominated for the position of BCSTA Provincial Councillor. Trustee David, Trustee Duncan, Trustee Gagnon, and Trustee Mabobi. I will now ask each nominated trustee if they are willing to accept the nomination. Trustee David?
Sadly decline. Thank you to my nominee.
Trustee Gagnon?
With thanks to my nominator, I will also be declining this one.
Trustee Mabobi?
I too will be declining. Thank you to my nominator.
Okay, I will accept the nomination with thanks to my nominator. Okay, so as there was one nomination accepted, then Trustee Duncan has been acclaimed as your rep. A little odd talking about yourself in third person, but it works. So thanks, folks. Okay, so that concludes the voting portion of our agenda this evening. We do have the matter of a motion to destroy the election ballots, including the text messages in our case. So the recommended motion in the pack-up is that the election ballots text messages be destroyed. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, and a seconder, Trustee David. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor with a show of hands. Okay, and that is unanimous. Thank you, folks. Okay, so we have one set of minutes at A4 from the 30th of October regular board meeting. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee McNally, and a seconder. Trustee Kwan, any amendments to the minutes? I just had one amendment that I noticed. So this is on page 11, F question period of the minute. So we normally, so for question period, both the question itself and then the answer provided in the meeting needs to be included in the minute as per our bylaw. And so I'm wondering if possibly we look to have that amendment made, so the answer to the question under question period included in the minute, and then have those minutes just referred to our December board meeting for us to review once that's been done. So that's my suggestion for an amendment to the minutes. Have the amendment done and referred back to us in December. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee McNally. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. All right, thank you, folks.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt the meeting, but I'm going to have to leave the meeting now with the chair's permission. Thank
Certainly,
you.
Trustee McNally. Take care.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for-
Congratulations to everyone who was elected.
Thank you, Trustee McNally. Good night. Okay, folks, so we're now at business arising from the minutes, A5 of our agenda. Trustees, do we have any business arising from the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll move us on. So our next item is under B, correspondence. The first piece of correspondence is at B1, a letter dated the 22nd of November from GVTA to SD61 trustees regarding in-person meetings. And then we have a second piece of correspondence under B2. And again, this is the letter that we added to the agenda from the Friends of Boca Creek Society, dated the 23rd of November, 2023. Trustees, would you like to discuss or pull any of that correspondence? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm hoping to pull the letter from the GVTA. I just wanted, first of all, to thank the GVTA for sharing their concerns about this. And just wanted to say how much I appreciate, not just the GVTA's commitment, but also our other rights holders and stakeholders on, being willing and wanting to foster an inclusive and participatory environment. I share your concerns about, our current online Board of Education meetings, specifically about the Zoom chat feature. And, I think that there's things that can be done in the interim. We acknowledge the importance of open and authentic debate. I think everyone on the board shares my sentiment in that. And the potential limitations of the online format. Regarding the request to return to in-person meetings, we value public input and we're committed to facilitating robust discussions. I think the concerns we've heard are around, the format as well as, public health concerns, logistics, and I think the biggest one is budget constraints. We are mindful that the setup with the current board in person is not conducive to live streaming out. And so there are some significant upgrades that need to happen to the equipment if we wanted to live stream out. So it's really about finding a balanced solution, prioritizing, of course, transparency and participant safety, but also those budget constraints and balancing, the needs for in public meetings against, resource allocations for our students. So I just want to say, the input from all of our rights holders and stakeholders is valued. I don't think this is something we're going to say yes or no to. I think it's something we definitely have to keep discussing, and I think we need to keep this conversation open and value, any other input that we hear from any of our stakeholders and rights holders. So thank you so much for your input.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Okay, I guess the only thing I wanted to add just around that was maybe a practical suggestion. So I appreciate and I agree with Trustee Kwan's assessment of kind of where we are and the need for ongoing dialogue and reflection. But I'm wondering if I could suggest, so the chat feature It is unfortunate. It wasn't something that I recognized, was not viewable from the folks that are watching the meeting rather than participating. And so one of the things that we have done in the past at in-person meetings, where usually we would simply read out a motion, and then again the viewing public in the past wouldn't necessarily have been able to quite understand until the minute of the meeting what the motion actually was. We started to put motions into Word documents and then project them essentially. So an equivalent in the virtual environment would be that we put motions rather than just in the chat for the convenience of our staff and one another in a Word doc, and then share screen so that it's I guess really performing two functions. One, for the benefit of our staff so that they understand what we're moving and so on, for the benefit of those participating directly in the meeting, and then also addressing one of the points raised in the letter from the GBTA, that that way folks at home who are viewing the live stream can also keep up with what's being moved. So that would just be a suggestion, a practical one. Okay. So again, thank you so much for the letter. We appreciate it, and we'll look to implement in the short term anyway some changes to ensure that folks can keep up with what's happening. Okay, so we also have a correspondence under B2. I wonder, trustees, whether you want to give me any direction to reach out to the Friends of Boca Creek Society to make arrangements for some kind of meeting. Trustee Painter and then Trustee Kwan. Go ahead, Trustee Painter.
Thank you, Chair. Just echoing your comments, I do think it would be good to begin the process of exploring opportunities to look at revitalizing that reach of Boca Creek. So,
okay, did you want to, Trustee Kwan or Trustee Painter, were either of you interested in moving a motion to direct me to do so? Trustee Kwan? Or
yes.
Trustee Painter? Okay, both? Okay.
Get my name in the books here.
Who would like to move it then? Trustee Painter, you want to move it? Okay. And Trustee Kwan is seconder? Okay, wonderful. Any discussion or any particular direction, or just reach out in order to set up a mutually agreeable time to meet to discuss potential? Yeah, okay. Okay. All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. All right, thank you, trustees. All right, so we're moving on to trustee reports. The first is C1, Chair's report. My report is there for your information. There's also a recommended motion. The recommended motion is actually in relation to the work plan. And so maybe what I'll do is, I guess first, I want to just highlight one section from my report to you this month. And that is just under the acknowledgements. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we, this month have been busy with the honor of commemorating both Indigenous Veterans Day on the 8th of November, Remembrance Day on 11th of November, and then Transgender Day of Remembrance on the 20th of November. In addition, on the 20th of November is the National Child Day. And this is an excellent opportunity for educators, parents, and caregivers to teach children about their rights. And so we celebrate children as active participants in their communities and as individuals who can share and have voice and be heard in respect to decisions that affect their lives. So Canada joined the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child on November 20th in 1989 and made a commitment to ensure all children are treated with respect, dignity, and that children have access to opportunities that allow them to reach their full potential. So I just wanted to highlight those acknowledgements from my report. And then colleagues, if you have any questions. Okay, hearing none, let's move up to the recommended motion. So again, this is in relation to B under Chair's report. And essentially, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education of Greater Victoria direct the superintendent to incorporate provincial and local reporting data releases into the corresponding month of the board work plan, including but not limited to the HOD report in December and the EDI or MDI in February to March. So again, the idea is just that we would look to incorporate these data releases into our work plan, really as a placeholder, so that we pause and are very deliberate about reflecting in the month that the data release is released on what that means for our students and how we can utilize that data in our decision making. So I'm happy to move that recommended motion, but I would be looking for a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Any discussion? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think further to that, you know, not just as a placeholder, but I think as, you know, there's so many things coming at everyone. I think it's always prudent to have, you know, a way to keep it forefront in our mind so that, you know, we're looking at what that board work plan looks like and we can prepare as necessary, knowing that it's coming.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks, Trustee Kwan. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the recommended motion with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, and then finally under C1C, so this is the 2024-2025 budget process and information. The board passed a motion at a special board meeting directing the vice chair and I to work with the superintendent to put together a budget process recommendation, including both information and schedule. And so at C1C, you'll see the fruits of that work. So we came up with three, essentially what are terms of reference for 3 working groups. We also included a draft schedule that outlines key dates throughout the budget cycle. So I wonder if Secretary Treasurer or Superintendent Whitten wanted to highlight anything or speak to any elements of what we worked on, because it was collaborative work that we all did together.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, if I may, just one part that we did discuss, and it isn't represented in the composition of the working groups, is the addition of members of staff from Indigenous Education Department as well as Inclusive Ed Department, most notably in the areas when we're talking about department budgets and the special purpose budgets. So just wanted to highlight that and bring that forward.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I'm going to turn to our partners. Be very interested to hear views from our partners about the recommended process as it relates to the working groups and the schedule. As a point of clarification, I just wanted to highlight that this is by no means the only budget information that the board will be considering or the only recommendations. All other budget information and recommendations regarding like resource allocations, reallocations, or reductions will come to board meetings for consideration. So I just wanted to clarify that in case anybody was wondering. Trustee Painter, yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering if there had been an opportunity to reach out to rights holders to determine if this was something that was going to work from their perspective, with respect to their participation. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Painter. Superintendent?
I will actually invite Secretary Treasurer Stride to speak to this if she has been working with and will be working with representatives from the 4 houses.
Thank you, Superintendent. Secretary Treasurer, go ahead.
Through the chair, Julie and I will actually be meeting with the 4 houses through first of all, through their LEA meetings, and then depending on the feedback that we receive from each of the 4 houses, on a process or meetings that work for them. So far, we've only met with one of the houses, and they're interested in having just sort of small meetings with Julie and I and Shelley, just to be able to get a better understanding of the budget, to be able to relay information to parents who are asking questions. Part of that conversation was a communication plan. And so building that in, and how we, information that they felt was important, that is relayed back to the board, that there would be a communication plan in place. So we still have more meetings to come, so I'm not sure if they will all be similar, but we'll continue to share that information out as we have those meetings.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. First of all, I know it's tough to get through a whole agenda package for some of our stakeholders and rights holders that might be present here, but would welcome any feedback on this process and as you see it and as we go through it. So just leaving that open for any of our partners who have any feedback and have some comments on the process so far. I know it's fairly new and all lined up here for the first time. And then the second thing I just wanted to point out was that we do have our couple representative student reps at the meeting tonight, and just wanted to point out that further to the student symposium and some of the connections that we want to make at individual schools, that they are welcome to attend any of these working groups at any time. So just wanted to make sure that Hamza and Alethea know that you are welcome to attend these working groups at any point as well.
Yeah, so the floor is open, and before I turn to trustees to have any further discussion, if partners have any questions, comments, or suggestions, would be very pleased to hear those. President Turcotte, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Just a question through the chair to whomever can answer. I'm just trying to understand the process here this evening. So I see all the various groups, and then are you going to go over the timeline or not this evening? I'm just not sure that I understand the calendar and the timeline and who's meeting with whom. Thank you.
No problem. Secretary Treasurer, could I ask you or the superintendent to speak to the schedule?
Chair, I can kind of go through the schedule and hopefully add some clarification, or if we need to add further clarification, I'm happy to do that. I guess starting right from the top, we're already at the November 27th meeting. We did have a representative advisory council of students meeting already where we did discuss budget. Tomorrow we'll be discussing the budget process with the district leadership team. And then you'll see in the schedule that there are meetings that are set up with the board chair, trustee liaison or trustee representative, principals, vice principals, senior leadership team, and students at the 7 different high schools. The goal is to have those meetings with students to allow a candid conversation in a smaller group, and to provide some feedback prior to the student symposium, which is planned on January 11th. Just below those meetings, we don't have dates for those, which is why they're sort of at the top. Following those meetings, there's partner connections meetings. So those are with our education partners. And those are in the works of being scheduled as well. Again, a smaller group meetings with trustees, with representatives from those education partner groups, senior leadership and financial services. And I put evening question mark, but some of them may be during the daytime. We're still scheduling those. That information is, those meetings are to allow those groups to share information with trustees and in a smaller group and not in a larger group where it's just a more safer isn't the right word, but a place where you can share more information that you might not want to have like minuted in a public meeting and just be able to share thoughts more freely. Working down from there, then we start to look at sharing information out to the public and also receiving the board receiving information from those student and partner connections meetings, because not everyone will be attending all of the meetings. And then we will be providing information to the individual working groups. So there will be some general budget information, probably information about the strategic plan and ESLR and things that we're tying our resources to. And then the working groups will start their work. So not totally organized yet, but we're thinking that we might be able to have the working group, all three working groups meeting on the same night and then just separate it out. If we do that in person, then it allows for some of the trustees or senior leadership or financial services to circulate between the three working groups if there are questions that are coming up. And so there are 5 meetings planned with the working groups. The first one starting on December 13th and the last one being on February 15th. Partway through, so the end of January, there would be a working group update to the board. So just sort of a status update on where they're at with the work. And then February 29th would be the date where the working groups would provide recommendations to the board. And then throughout there, we've highlighted the board meetings because instead of the budget advisory committee feeding information to the board, the information will be coming to the board from the working groups and other meetings and events through the board meeting. So all of the information will be shared in the board meeting. So they're highlighted there as well. We've also noted some communication points. So following board meetings, and it may not just be following board meetings, but opportunities for the board to share out information around the budget process, upcoming events, seeking feedback, etc. We have, if you go to the beginning of March, we're setting up the talking tables event, which everyone seems to really like, and we've scheduled it a bit later in the process as we're hoping that we will have worked through a number of items with the working groups and perhaps address some issues with the connection meetings that can help to bring information to that meeting that is not as hypothetical, so perhaps more relevant issues or actual options that are under consideration. We get our ministry funding announcement on March 15th, and then spring break is in there. We are hoping that after the ministry announcement that we can schedule our public meeting. And at that point, the public will be receiving the information on the balanced budget. So all of the information that's been discussed previously, options moving forward for consideration and public feedback. And then April 9th is the first and second reading of the budget, followed by the second and third reading of the budget bylaw and passing the budget. Again, our staffing packages go out on April 15th, And then we'll do a debrief or a survey to get feedback from all participants to see how this budget process worked shortly after the budget is approved by the end of April. I'm not sure if I've missed anything in there, but just trying to build in connections from these groups back to the board and the other way around. So hopefully that helps to make some sense, but happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. President Turcotte, did you have any follow-up questions that you would like to pose this evening?
Thank you for asking. I was just processing all the information there. So just from my understanding, there are 3 working groups. Okay, and the plan is that they'll all meet at the same time, the same evening. Yes?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. And then I was just trying to think the talking tables through, and I know it was a very popular event last year. And, you know, folks felt that they really had an opportunity to inform and give feedback to the board. So I'm just looking at the timeline, and it's going to be a little bit more narrow in scope. They're going to feel, you know, the participants at the talking tables will feel like they've really been a part of the process or have really made a contribution. So I'm just trying to think of what that's going to look like for them, because you know, being there last year, I know the conversation was more global about all the different areas of the budget, all the different things, all the different challenges. And so and perhaps I didn't hear it correctly, I'm misunderstanding, but if we're focusing that topic a little bit more, it will be different for folks who've participated in the past. And so I'm just wondering of how they might feel about that.
Thank you, President Turcotte. Secretary Treasurer, did you want to add anything in terms of context or intention behind that particular focusing of topic?
I think it's really helpful to hear that feedback as to what was valuable for that session. So if it is more general discussion about many different topics versus providing feedback on perhaps specific topics, then I can't speak for everyone, but I think we would be open to considering shifting that earlier in the process if that's what is valuable, or we could on March 7th still keep it wide open regardless of what's been discussed, and it's just going to be later in the process than what we did in the prior year. So I believe it was mid-January last time we did it. Yeah. I think I'm just open for feedback on that timing.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Any follow-up, folks, in terms of timing or any aspect of the process and schedule that folks have questions about or ideas that they'd like to contribute? We are getting started a little bit later, and so, you know, we are looking to the board this evening to approve or give some direction based on the recommendations that we brought back. But appreciating that things will also evolve. You'll note that the schedule, for instance, is draft, and so staff will be working away to try to you know, schedule those meetings, and there may be some dates and so on that change, of course. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
I just wanted to share my thoughts on the talking tables, and I definitely hear what President Turcotte is saying. I guess my mind went directly to the fact that last year it almost felt like perhaps maybe there wasn't enough information yet on specifics of the budget. And so to me, it seems like a good place to put it was a little bit later, because we have some sessions not only with the working groups, but also the information sharing to and from the board in public. So, hopefully the people who would be wanting to attend the talking tables would also be paying attention to those public meetings and being there to, if not participate, at least watch. So that was my only thought there, but I agree. I think, we're at the disposal of what works for everyone. So I think, we're flexible in how that works. At least I'm speaking for myself, but I would think that my colleagues would feel the same way.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Any other comments or suggestions, observations in relation to the recommended process and schedule in the packet? And again, the opportunity isn't just for the board, but also for our partners. Okay. So I would suggest, and again, I'll turn to the Secretary Treasurer and the Superintendent for some guidance here, but I suspect that we will want to have some direction from the board regarding the recommendations and whether the board ultimately is happy to proceed to adopt the recommendations this evening so that we can get the process started. Is that what you envision procedurally should occur this evening?
Yeah, we agree.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any other comments, and so that would mean that really now it's for myself and my colleagues to consider whether we're happy with adopting the recommended process and schedule in the packet this evening. And so this is sounds like a long way off, but it isn't, the 2024-25 budget process and schedule. All right, may I have a mover? Would someone like to move that motion? And again, that's to adopt the process in the packet, process and schedule. Thank you, Trustee Kwan, and a seconder. Trustee Bayo, thank you. Any discussion, trustees? Hearing none, all those in favor with a show of hands. And I believe that is unanimous. Thank you, folks. Okay, so we're moving along, and the next item on our agenda is trustee reports. We don't have any, I don't believe, unless I'm mistaken this evening, and so we'd be moving right along into D. And this is our Education Policy and Directions Standing Committee. At D1A, there are draft minutes, again, from our November meeting, again, for information only. And then we have recommended motions from the 6th of November meeting, lot 1 and 2. It all relates to a draft international student enrollment regulation. So, trustees, how would you like to proceed? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I just had, I wonder if it's okay if I ask a question, or do we need to have a motion on the floor first?
No, we can absolutely start with some questions. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, and I think this, the motions on the floor relate to, I believe later on we're looking at the, I'm trying to look on the agenda where it is. I believe it's under the superintendent's report where we're receiving international student program biannual report. And I just wondered if I could speak to that. I think I just wanted some clarification on first of all the numbers, and I wondered if there was an opportunity to request just some additional information on that report. And I wonder if that would relate to the regulations as they're presented tonight. So looking for perhaps some direction as to what we should do with that.
Yeah, so we can't debate the other item, but I appreciate that there's some overlap. We can only either move a new motion or debate the motions, the recommended motions. So yeah, so I suspect, like, if there's an interest in discussing the reporting in the most sort of general sense, in that it stems from the policy, which then relates to the regulation in the backup, then we can do that. But we won't be discussing the report until we get there. So maybe so what I'll do is I'm going to read these out for everybody. So we have a draft regulations 5128 international student enrollment, amendments to draft regulation 5128 student international student enrollment at A. So number one, amendment number one is there. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria amend draft regulation 5128 international student enrollment by removing this stricken out text and then replacing with the following regulation applies to international students who are students from outside Canada who I believe it's do not, there's a typo there, meet the Ministry of Education's funding eligibility requirements and or has to obtain authorization from the Canadian government to enter Canada with the intention of pursuing studies. And then at 2, we have a second recommended motion, again relating to the same draft regulations, and that's that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve amended draft regulation 5128 international student enrollment as appended. And so that related to a number of amendments that were made to the draft. And then finally at B, there's another recommended motion that the board accept draft regulation 5128 international student enrollment. So that's how we got there. Essentially what it was making one amendment to the very beginning of the draft regulation and then accepting the track changes in the appended version. So yeah, so if there's any other changes or amendments or anything else that the board would like us to do, now's the time. From my perspective, oh, sorry, Secretary Treasurer, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make sure that it was understood that that draft regulation reflects additional changes that were made by Dr. Jeff Davis from international education. So it was a little bit tricky because the first 2 motions came through ed policy, and then he was asked to see if he could make any suggested revisions to those before the board meeting. And so the second version of the documents that you see have his changes reflected in them. So that B are the changes that it is taking all of the amendments that were carried at ed policy plus some additional ones.
Okay, so so thank you to the Secretary Treasurer for the clarification. So A1 and 2 are the amendments that were made at committee, and then 1B are amendments that were made subsequent to that by the director. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification. I needed it. Okay, so Trustee Gagnon, you had a question or comment, and then Trustee Painter, did I see your hand or no? Oh, okay, Trustee Gagnon, you go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just one other grammatical fix to add to the one that you mentioned earlier. In that third last line of that red text, it would be requirements and/or have to obtain, just because it's plural students, so it would be have rather than has. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, appreciate that. So maybe a couple of just friendly amendments if we could, just to sort that out. Okay, so Trustee Painter, I just wanted to clarify that you didn't have your hand up, so thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so I'm thinking at this point that there maybe is a bit more that we need to do and maybe a bit more reflection. I'm wondering one of the ways for us to get there would be to refer the regulation back, So I'm gonna pause because I see that my colleague Trustee Kwan has her hand up. Go ahead, Trustee Kwan.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I guess I'm looking for a way to maybe look at this holistically. And personally, I think just from my point of view, looking at reporting out as well. So I was hoping to maybe move a motion to that effect if I could. Don't want to do that too early if there's others that are still waiting to speak. I don't want to stop that. So if everyone's okay with me going ahead with the motion, yeah, okay.
I think so. Trustee David, sorry, I just want to make sure I didn't miss your hand. It's my internet connection is not great this evening, so there's a bit of lag. So did I miss your hand, Trustee David? No, okay, wonderful. Okay, so I think you're good to move a motion if that's what you would like to do. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I was thinking, I guess we would start off with the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, and then direct the board chair and I guess another trustee of your choice. So we could fill that in to work with the superintendent directly to further develop the ISP regulation, or I guess enrollment part of the regulation, and bring it back to the December 2023 combined operations policy and planning committee meeting. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so it's combined. Yeah, so you mean the combined operations policy and planning and education policy and directions. Yeah. No, I got that. Sorry, superintendent, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, through the chair, just mindful of time, that's for next Monday. And the pack up needs to be done by Wednesday. So that gives us tomorrow to meet to discuss. So that's my concern with the timing. I'm not sure that's possible.
That is a very quick turnaround. Perhaps it can come back to the board in December, which gives us a bit more of a runway.
And I'm absolutely willing to just change that. That is a very reasonable concern. So I apologize for not recognizing that. Thank you very much for bringing that up. So we could change that to the December 2023 board meeting instead.
Yeah, everything is very condensed in December, which is welcome because everyone's looking forward to the break, I'm sure. But yeah, it all happens in a couple of weeks. Okay, all right. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Bayo, okay. So yeah, thanks folks, bear with me because I is quite laggy. It takes a while for me to actually even see that you've got your hand up. All right, any discussion? Trustee Painter?
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize. I was hoping I could get the motion repeated. I was trying to look for what the implications were in the regulation, and I lost the thread.
Sure, Trustee Kwan, would you mind just reading the motion again?
And I will certainly try. It was on the fly, so I'll see if I can recreate it. Okay, so that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the board chair and trustee of her choice to work with the superintendent to further develop the ISP enrollment of the regulation and bring it back to the December 2023 board meeting, regular board meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. All right, so having that clarified, any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor with a show of hands. All those opposed? And that is balance in favor with Trustee Painter and Trustee Gagnon opposed. Okay. Okay, so that
the
concludes.
Secretary
Oh,
Treasurer
sorry,
has her-
Secretary Treasurer. I see you're waving your hand in slow motion.
Is there any chance that you could refer to the specific section in the regulation just for our clarification? When you mention the further develop the enrollment? Just want to be really clear about which piece.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes, I am scrolling. I will be there in a second, sorry. I'm going from the agenda down to where the regulation is. Where are we? I'm sorry. Many apologies. Here we go.
So Trustee Kwan, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that you're looking to have me work with the superintendent to put into the regulation more on the reporting piece that stems from the policy.
That's correct.
That's what I took away.
Yeah, I was just trying to find the section it would fit in, but perhaps maybe that I should leave that out and for you to work through.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary, honestly. I think that's something that we can bring back in the form of a recommendation to the board.
Yep.
Secretary Treasurer, does that clarify for you?
Yeah, I missed the part, the reporting piece. It wasn't clear, so that makes more sense.
Okay.
My apologies for not being clear.
No, it's okay. It's okay for us to stop and back up and clarify. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Okay, so if we're good to proceed, I'm going to move us on to our next item, which is at D2 Operations Policy and Planning Committee. We've got, again, draft minutes for information only. And then we have a couple of recommended motions so that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve the recommended motions from the November 20th, 2023 Operations Policy and Planning meeting. We have two motions. One, Privacy Management Program Administrative Regulations. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria accept Administrative Regulations 1161.2 Privacy Management Program, 1161.3 Privacy Impact Assessments, and 1161.4 Critical Incident and Privacy Breach as presented on November 27th, 2023, and further direct the superintendent to bring the administrative regulations to the Board of Education for review within 1 year at the Operations Policy and Planning meeting in November 2024. The second recommended motion is that draft policy 1450 sensitive workplace, that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve draft policy 1450 sensitive workplace. All right, trustees, how would you like to move these forward? Do you want to look at them as a group or separate them out? Oh, Secretary Treasurer, go ahead. Thank you for waving, because that seems to be the only way I see you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to clarify what's in the agenda package for the privacy management program. So you'll see the first memo and regulations are what was presented at the November 20th ops meeting, carried by the standing committee and coming forward today. Right after that, you'll see another memo specifically for this meeting and advising that Director Andy Canty has taken the recommended suggestions that were made in the ops and updated the admin regulations. So just want to make sure that when the motion refers to November 27th, that it's the second set, not the first set that we're looking at.
That's great. Thank you very much again for the clarification. So folks, just to be clear, it's a second set with the further revisions. So I think we've got revisions in red and also in blue in the pack-up to kind of delineate between the various revisions. And thank you very much to Director Canty for undertaking that further work. We really appreciate it. So if everybody's clear on what it is that we would be moving, I will turn it over to Trustee Painter. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not actually trying to take control. I was just going to request that we get a page number for that. I find that trying to scroll up and down in between independent pages, I lose my location. So if you could give me a page just to where it starts, then I'll know I'm on the right track.
Sounds good. Secretary Treasurer, do you have that at hand?
Page 59 is the start of the November 27th memo. And it's 2 pages, and then the regulations follow immediately after that. So page 61 is the first one.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now that we're clear on the various memos and their implications for tonight and for the motion before us, how did you want to proceed, trustees? Did you want to consider the two together? Did you want to separate them out for discussion? How would you like to proceed? Trustee Painter, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It would be my preference to take these one at a time, simply because for me, some of this is new content that has been updated since ops.
Yep, fair enough. So we're going to sever it. Okay, so we'll start with the first recommended motion then, which is in relation to the Privacy Management Program administrative regulations. So again, trustees, I'm at your disposal. How would you like to proceed? Would you like to move the motion and then discuss? Do you have any questions of clarification, given that we had some changes between the standing committee and this evening? Maybe we'll start with some questions. Does that sound good, folks? Does anybody have any questions about the changes that have been made? And again, the changes were in response to suggestions that were made at the standing committee. Trustee Painter, go ahead.
No, I just, sorry, I apologize. I'm just realizing now that I spent my time on the weekend focusing on the wrong set. And so I feel like I'm scrambling at this moment, trying to quickly review the actual ones that we're discussing. And I'm just a little off balance.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, sorry about the confusion. Does anybody have any questions in relation to the revised regulations? Any comments or thoughts from our partners? Okay, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
I'm actually happy to move that motion then.
Okay, may I have a seconder? Trustee Gagnon, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, and again, so we're looking at the further revised regulations in the pack-up and the recommended motion at B1. Any discussion, folks? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor with a show of hands. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we have the balance of the board in favor with Trustee Painter abstaining. All right, thank you, folks. That leads us to our second recommended motion this evening at B2, which is draft policy 1450, sensitive workplace. And again, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education of Greater Victoria approve draft policy 1450, sensitive workplace. Well, before I ask for a mover, are there any questions in relation to the draft policy? Yeah, Trustee Painter, go ahead.
I realize it might sound off topic, but I think it'll help. Is there going to be a regulation developed to support this policy? Is that the intention?
Yeah, good question, Trustee Painter. I'll turn to the superintendent, who may be able to assist me with who to direct that to.
Yes, I believe that we would create a corresponding regulation in support of the policy that would come after the policy is passed.
Good.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you. I'll just throw out my observation. The one, it's not really a hesitation, but the one observation I had is that while I'm completely supportive of the direction that this is not applicable to in 3.6 culturally responsive activities or ceremonies, that it's not intended to place any limitations on it. My interest was in ensuring that there's still a notification mechanism involved in that, because we don't want to block the practices, but if people are sensitive to sense, it may still be a factor for them. So advanced warning, I think, is a reasonable step that wouldn't impact on the actual conduct of such practices.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. Were you suggesting an amendment to the policy, or do you think it could be read more broadly in that manner?
I believe it can be addressed in the regulation down the road. So I just wanted to make that observation as a concern.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the clarification. All right. Just turning to our partners, just to check in to see if you had any comments or observations that you wanted to share this evening in relation to this one. Okay. All right. All right. So may I have a mover? Trustee Kwan, thank you. And a seconder, Trustee Gagnon. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor with show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. All right, so we're moving on to district leadership team reports under E. The first report is from the superintendent. Her monthly report is at E1A. Superintendent Whitten, did you want to highlight anything in particular from your report this month?
I think if I may, through the chair, just highlight the gratitude pieces. There's one that's listed with regards to the facilities department. They have been working very quickly in handling different incidents that come up through our facilities and through the school. So many thanks to that department, who are quick acting and on school sites as soon as we have alerted them. And also just with regards to opportunities we've had over the last couple of months to meet with partners and with principals and vice principals around some thoughts and concerns that they have with regards to supports in schools, and really appreciate those open conversations and opportunities to dialogue and look for solutions collaboratively. So gratitude to the partner groups as well as the Vice Principal and Principal Association.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Whitten. Trustees, any questions for the superintendent in relation to her monthly report? Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually, first of all, just wanted to say thank you for including that gratitude piece in your monthly reports. It's really great to see. We don't always get a chance to thank specific people on specific issues. So I just want to express my appreciation for you putting that in every month. And I actually just wanted to highlight under your goal too, the first thing there is the Song He's Living Labs event. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that. I don't really have too much insight into what that was about. So I wondered if you would be willing to share a little bit about what that event was.
I would normally love to share on that. That actually was at the evening of that. It became a conflict, so I had two places to be in at one time. So this was it was at the Songhees Wellness Center. It was last week. We have a grant that we're working with UVic. And through the Indigenous Education Department, we have opportunities for students throughout the summer to have land-based and also water-based opportunities. So I think that John Harris, as well as Dr. Nimi, lead this along with Songhees students and the University of Victoria. But past that, I think they're the ones that can share more broadly and certainly more specifically on that, on the living labs.
Thank you. And I apologize for putting you on the spot like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Kwan and Superintendent Whitten. Any other questions for the superintendent in relation to her monthly report? Okay, so we have a recommended motion that we accept the superintendent's monthly report as presented. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, seconded by Trustee David. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, moving right along. So at B, we have an International Student Program biannual report. Superintendent, did you want to present that report for us?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. This is as a result from the policy 5128 in section 3.9. It is requires a biannual report. This is the first biannual report, and we will see another one come in April. Typically, or moving forward, we would see it on multiple years, but given the time frame and also what we don't fully know yet, we've provided a report for the coming school year. So you'll see, I'm not sure why it says table 2 when there is only one table, but on the table on the second page, there is information with regards to the projected enrollments for the next school year. And what we've used to come up with those numbers has been built from previous meetings and previous memos. So we've looked at the capacity of the school, the number of students who are returning, the number of students who in the past or historically have requested a transfer through all of the priorities and the space remaining, as well as historical knowledge on the number of international students who may be placed in the schools. And the number is the projection. That this has been a lot of work on behalf of Director Davis, as well as the Assistant or Associate Secretary Treasurer Lutner on these projections. So again, I think as we move forward, we're looking at this based on what knowledge we have, as well as what capacity and space we have on the transfers from previous years, as well as the capacity of each of the schools. So we have Dr. Davis on the meeting, as well as the Associate Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you very much, Superintendent, and welcome, Director Davis. Thanks for being here. Nice to see you, Julie. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Okay, so I think we'll just start maybe with some questions. So yeah, folks, trustees, do you have any questions in relation to the report? Yep, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, apologies. I have a couple questions. I'll start with the first one, and that was really what I highlighted earlier. And I hate to make anyone's job harder, so I just wanted more to find out, what the ability is to provide, numbers. I know in the past we've seen some really great information on, ISP enrollment as opposed to capacity. And how easy is it to compare it to functional capacity versus what the actual capacity is, and also some of our forecasted enrollment numbers, I guess according to what we have for the next few years, okay, trying to slow down here a little bit and just comparing the ISP numbers to what the school enrollment looks like with our resident students as well. So I just wondered how likely and how difficult and how much work it is to actually, provide all of that reporting in one report. So yeah, just curious about that.
Okay, thanks, Trustee Kwan. Superintendent, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So this is building from the previous month. So from November 6th, we provided the information on the capacity of the school, the number that were projected to come into that school, and then the students who are coming back from international. And what we've come up with is the remaining space in that school. And that is what part of these projections are showing. So for some schools, they may have more space, but historically, we know that we may not reach the number equivalent to the space available. In other places, we know that there isn't any space. So the re-enrolling international students for next year would be that would be the number. That would be the top number. So hopefully that makes sense, but that this chart is built from the November 6th information.
Thank you, Superintendent. I think probably what we, and I think through discussions, and I think now that we've got a board motion directing some further work, I think really it's just about lacing all of the data together into a single table with capacity, with projections over a number of years to give us a high level system view. Julie, go ahead. And then Trustee Kwan.
I do just want to point out that we will be receiving our Beauregard projections in December. So some of these numbers that you see may change because they are based on projections from a year ago. So if the information comes up and looks a little different, that's why.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. That's a very, very important reminder. Yeah, we're at that important time of the year where we get new Beauregard data. Yeah, so perhaps we could look to the possibility of weaving some of the data together, and then in light of the Beauregard data that we're going to get in December as well. Okay, any other questions about this report before? Oh, yeah, Trustee Kwan, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, and I appreciate both the superintendent and the associate secretary treasurer. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Can I just say, Julie? I really do appreciate that context. I think it's maybe because I hadn't made the connection that this was carried on from the November 6th data. So I really do appreciate you pointing that out. And then, so I guess the question is, and just to clarify, so the projected enrollment for the next school year, where we're down, that's based on the capacity that we have at schools that we are able to accommodate. Is that correct? Or is that really enrollment is down because we don't have as many students coming?
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Superintendent?
It's a combination of both. It is in some of the schools, there is not capacity to have the numbers increased. And in some of the other schools, that is a projected number that the international department will be looking to meet. Some of that may not be possible, and I certainly don't want to speak for Dr. Davis, but I do know that he has looked at the numbers and projected what he may be able to meet in some of these schools. So it's a both capacity and projections.
Thank you, Superintendent. Okay. All right, folks, our next item is trustee questions. Trustees, this is your opportunity to ask questions that you might have. And so I'll open the floor to my colleagues who have questions this evening. Okay, hearing none. E2 Secretary Treasurer's report. Secretary Treasurer, is there anything from your monthly report that you would like to highlight for the board?
The only thing I would highlight is that I was able to sit in on the alternate program audit compliance workshop, which was a recommendation by the ministry. So it was a great learning event for me, having not known all of the details of that. So We were able to have almost a one-on-one workshop with the 5 members of the SJ Burnside team.
Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer. Any questions, trustees, in relation to the Secretary Treasurer's monthly report? No? Okay. We have a recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria receive the Secretary Treasurer's report as presented. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Bao, and seconded by Trustee Gagnon. Any discussion, trustees? All right, hearing none, all those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, folks. Okay, so we are now at B, and this is the 1211 Gladstone statutory right-of-way for BC Hydro and TELUS. We are at a third reading. Secretary Treasurer, is there anything that you wanted to highlight or explain procedurally before we start our third reading?
Just that the board has carried the first 2 readings. The third reading required unanimous approval, which we didn't have at the last meeting, and which is why just the third reading is coming to this meeting tonight. I have at the bottom of the memo is the recommended motion that reflects the first 2 readings on the November 14th, and then at the third reading on November 27th.
Okay, so before I launch into the third reading of the bylaw, I just want to pause for a moment and just ask colleagues if they have any questions before we get started. Okay, all right, folks, so the recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, Caledonia Electrical Distribution and Telecommunication Transmission Disposal Right-of-Way of Real Property Bylaw 24-01, being a bylaw to grant a statutory right-of-way to BC Hydro and TELUS on the Caledonia redevelopment property beside Victoria High School, legally described as PID 031-731-848, Lot A, Sections 50 and 53, Spring Ridge, Victoria City, District Plan EPP 88786, in respect of civil infrastructure associated with the underground distribution of electricity by BC Hydro and the telecommunications and data transmission by TELUS and related works, read a third time, passed and adopted this 27th day of November 2023, and that the Secretary Treasurer and the Board Chair be authorized to execute and seal this bylaw on behalf of the Board. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, and a seconder, Trustee Mabobi. Any discussion, trustees? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor with a show of hands. All those opposed? Oh, sorry, I just need to back up. Trustee Bayo, I'm sorry, were you in favor or opposed? In favor? Okay, thank you. Sorry, the lag of it is causing a little bit of a delay with how quickly I see your hands go up. Okay, I'm going to call the vote again. I just want to make sure that there's no confusion. So all those in favor with a show of hands, and if you wouldn't mind just leaving them up for a minute, just to let me see you. Thank you. All right, and opposed? Okay, so the balance of the board is in favor and Trustee Kwan is opposed. Okay, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate that. We are now at item C, section 72 report. Secretary Treasurer, would you mind presenting your memo for the board?
Thank you, Chair. We've included this memo just to provide some background information on the section 72 report that we include in our regular board agendas. We have had a question come up around some of these items, so they may seem a little bit out of context, but you'll understand shortly. A section 72(3) of the School Act states that a board must prepare a record containing a general statement as to the nature of matters discussed and the general nature of the decisions reached at a meeting from which persons other than trustees or officers of the board or both were excluded, and the record must be open for inspection at all reasonable times by any person who may make copies or extracts on payment of a fee set by the board. Some school districts don't include them in their agenda. We do, so they are available to the public if they want to reference them at any time. And there is just a tally there of the in-camera meetings that the board has had since its inaugural meeting on November 9th, 2022. And 11 of the meetings were our regular scheduled in-camera meetings. And then there were 29 special in-camera meetings. And lastly, just want to draw your attention to the fact that there were 4 different reports that were included in agenda packages that reference the strategic plan in error. And so on at the April 23rd, 2023 regular board meeting, the board did amend those reports to reflect what was actually discussed in those meetings. So it was all carried in one motion, and the motion is there. And this is just being provided to you for information.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Okay, so just to confirm, the memo was very, very helpful. And I just wanted to confirm sort of process here. So we started to kind of move away from the Section 72 template that we've been previously using in the spring, I think it was. And so I think really the question for the board is, you know, what do we want to do in terms of our Section 72 reports? Do we want to continue with the sort of, I guess I would call it template, for lack of a better way to describe it, or the approach to the Section 72 report? Or do we want to, so that would be prior to the change that was made in the spring, or do we want to not include attendees? So I think that Secretary Treasurer, would you just confirm that? I want to make sure my understanding is correct, that what was changed in terms of the template used for reporting was that the attendees at the meeting were removed. Is that right?
That is correct. There has actually been 2 changes to the report over time. We used to also include another section that referenced how many motions were carried during the meeting. That dropped off probably unintentionally with the change of people within the Secretary Treasurer's office. The second change was intentional, and that was around, we used to include attendance or trustees and administration attendance on there. And a decision was made to remove that, as it's not reflected in the requirements of the School Act. And there was some concern at one point raised around the topics that could be referred to and the attendees, and being able to sort of infer as to perhaps who or what might have been discussed in that meeting. So again, there are across the school districts, they vary. Some of them include attendance and some of them don't. We tried to get some information for tonight's meeting, rationale one way or the other, but I don't have anything to share at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. So thanks for the clarification. From my own perspective, I think, you know, different school districts have different approaches, and the way that it's drafted in the legislation is allows for some different approaches, and so from my perspective, I think I always want to be erring on the side of transparency and providing as much information as possible. My suggestion would be that we revert back to our previous approach, and that where there are concerns about particular Section 72 reports in relation to particular meetings where we think the usual approach might have some kind of unintended consequence, then I think really that we just look at that on a case-by-case basis and make a decision as a board about on the basis of the recommendations and advice from staff. Whether we, in a particular case, it wouldn't be appropriate to publish attendees, for instance. that would be my suggestion, but looking forward to hearing from my colleagues as well. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, mine was more of a question, and I don't know if I would suggest it or not, but is it a possibility to include only trustee attendees and not staff attendees?
Secretary Treasurer's shaking her head. Yeah, I think that's a positive. Could do that.
Yeah, I've definitely seen both. So there are some school districts that just include trustees.
So I don't know if we're ready to make a decision tonight, or if anybody's ready to move a motion tonight. Perhaps we want to reflect on what we've heard and consider the memo further, and then perhaps give some direction in a couple of weeks' time when we'll be back together again around the board table. Okay, thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Oh, go ahead.
If the board is considering recommendations, the second piece of the school act around the general nature of decisions reached, it'd be good to have some guidance as to what you would like to see there, whether it's 1 or 2 motions were carried or general decisions were made on the following matters. I think that's something that's missing at the moment.
Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer. Yeah, we'll certainly keep that in mind, and perhaps we'll bring this back to our agenda in December, and we'll look at those pieces. Okay, so if folks are happy to proceed in that manner, I don't see any hands to the contrary, then I'm going to move us on. Okay. Okay, so just bear with me. So we are now at question period. So F, and there was just a couple of procedural aspects I wanted to just pause to ground our question period this evening. So during board meetings, the public may submit questions to question.period@sd61.bc.ca at the beginning of the meeting. These questions will be answered during the question period by the chair of the meeting or staff through the chair, if an answer is readily available. As per our board's bylaw, the purpose of question period is additional public opportunities to ask questions, to have a question on the record. It is in the public interest and for public accountability. Procedurally, questions will be submitted to the Deputy Superintendent prior to the start of question period. Questions will be asked in the order of submission. Priority will be given to those who have not presented during the community presentation portion of the agenda. And if time permits, questions may be submitted in writing from the floor. The question period will be limited to 15 minutes, and the board chair, with assistance from the superintendent of schools, may direct the question to the appropriate person. If the question is not answered at the meeting, the individual asking the question will be contacted in a timely manner. There will be a limit of 1 question per person. All questions will be included in the board minutes unless ruled out of order, and all answers given at the board meeting will be recorded in the minutes. The board chair has discretion to call questions out of order, and the writer of any question ruled out of order will be contacted, and the question ruled out of order will be brought to the next in-camera board meeting. Answers to questions must not result in staff workload exceeding 30 minutes. Okay, so I just wanted to ground the conversation with a little bit of background and procedural context as it relates to the rules that govern our question period. So without further ado, we do have a couple of questions, I believe. The first one, just bear with me. Okay, so the first one is as follows. The record shows that your board has met in camera 32 times since your inaugural meeting mid-November. Under Section 72 of the BC School Act, subsection 3, a board must prepare a record containing a general statement as to the nature of the matters discussed and the general nature of the decision reached at a meeting from which persons other than trustees or officers of the board or both were excluded, and the record must be open for inspection at all reasonable times by any person. It appears that the board makes no minute available to the public that shows who is in attendance and what decisions were made. Did the SD61 board meet 32 times and not pass any motions? Which trustees and staff members were present? How does the board justify excluding the public from discussions about the strategic plan? Okay, so I'm going to just respond to part of it from my perspective as board chair. So the Board of Education holds board meetings as needed in order to carefully consider the board's business. The board does not hesitate to call additional board meetings as needed in order to ensure that we have enough time to do our due diligence in respect to our business. Superintendent Whitten, I wonder if you also have anything that you would like to add, or if you would like to direct the questions to any other member of staff.
No, thank you. Nothing from us.
Okay, so we have, I believe, one more question. Just bear with me. Okay, so it is as follows. In the October 30th, 2023 board meeting, Superintendent Whitten stated, in the case of Marigold parking, there were no concerns from any of the initial community consultations, nor from the principal, vice principal, architects, or engineers. In a subsequent FOI response dated November 22nd, 2023, Ms. Vistison Harwood offers, facilities also works with the principals, vice principals, and community members regarding any facilities related matters at the schools. For example, a community member from Marigold Elementary suggested a walkway around the new parking spaces, which was completed as part of the project. A fence was suggested, which was installed along a chip trail for students to access the site. Could the school district kindly clarify their position as to whether parking safety concerns were communicated to the district by any member of the school community during the community consultation process? Superintendent Whitten, would you be able to assist with the response to that question or direct it to a staff member that could?
We do have the Director of Facilities on, who is ready to respond to that question.
Thank you kindly. Welcome to the Director. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks. Regarding the question, I believe that there was no concerns around the parking that came up during the initial consultation process, but later, once the building permit was approved, and were subsequently considered. But I'll have to look over the timeline and get back and share that timeline.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll come back to the requester, to the individual asking the question offline. Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes our question period portion of our agenda. We are now at G, which is the public disclosure of in-camera items. I believe we have two. Okay, so just bear with me. Secretary Treasurer, that is correct. We have two items for disclosure. Okay, so there are two items or two motions for public disclosure. So from the July 6th, sorry, just bear with me, folks. From the July 6th, 2023 special in-camera meeting, minutes approved on November 7th, 2023, the 2023-2024 annual 5-year capital plan school food infrastructure program, moved by Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee Mabobi, that the School District of Greater Victoria, sorry, one second, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, move the approved motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the proposed 5-year capital plan school food infrastructure program for the 2023-2024 as provided on the 5-year capital plan summary for 2023-24 and the voting results to the public. Motion was carried unanimously. From the November 7th, 2023 special in-camera meeting, minutes not yet approved, Victoria Hospice Agreement for Purchase and Sale, moved by Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee Gagnon, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, direct the chair to report out the following at the November 2023 regular board meeting. The agreement for purchase and sale with Vic Hospice for 1.28 acres on Richmond Road was mutually terminated. Motion carried unanimously. Okay, folks, so that concludes our items under G. With the exception of G1, I just want to highlight that there is a record of in-camera board meeting from October 30th, which is there for your information. That now brings us to H, new business and notice of motions. We don't have any new business this evening. I wonder, trustees, if we have any notices of motion. Okay, hearing none, we have reached the conclusion of our agenda, and I'm just now looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you, folks. Take care. Thanks so much for your time. Good night.